Great. Thanks, Jesse, and good evening, everybody. Welcome to the April 2023 full board meeting for Manhattan Community Board 4. It feels a bit off to be here tonight on a Tuesday, but not to be confused. It is indeed Tuesday, April 4th. We're here tonight because Passover begins tomorrow, so need to get our business out of the way before the holidays begin. My name is Jeffrey LeFrancois, and it's a privilege to be calling this meeting to order this evening as chair. Tonight's meeting is being held via Zoom as the mayor's extended the executive order to allow for public meetings to be held virtually through the end of April. You'll hear more on this a bit later, but stay tuned that we anticipate that the executive order will be expiring come May, at which point in time our adopted hybrid meeting policy will kick in. So framing that up now for future discussion on this as we march towards that. Our meeting tonight is being streamed live on our YouTube channel, and a transcript is being recorded. And of course, all of this will be accessible to the public during and after our meeting will live on YouTube. As is our custom, we'll have public session later in the meeting where members of the public will be given the ability to speak during the public session. There was a link circulated in advance for sign up. Note that there is a long list of public speakers this evening. Many signed up for the same item. Our first vice chair, Jessica Chait, will lay out the ground rules when we move to the public session of our meeting later this evening. The agenda for tonight's meeting can be found on our website at mcb4.nyc. And with that, we move into the first portion of our agenda tonight, which is a presentation to the full board and the public. First up, we're joined by Vicki Been for a presentation on the history and status of New York State's cap on residential floor area ratio development, what we commonly refer to as FAR. Ms. Been is a former deputy mayor and is currently a law professor at NYU, where she is also the faculty director of NYU's Furman Center for Real Estate and Urban Policy. Given the focus on this issue and the request for a lot more information on the topic, it felt appropriate to invite her here this evening to speak on this matter. So Vicki, I thank you very much for joining us tonight and pass it over to you.
Thank you for having me and for having this discussion. It's great to see some folks from Community Board 4 that I had the pleasure of being with on the Chelsea Fulton Working Group and also on the Hudson River Park Trust. So it's really nice to see folks. So Jesse, we're gonna share my PowerPoint.
Yep, I can do so.
Okay. So Jeffrey, sent me a list of questions about the FAR 12 limit that people had been asking, and so I'm just going to try to work through those questions, and I'm happy to answer or try to answer any other questions or to elaborate, on any points that aren't clear or that you want to talk further about.
One more moment, Vicki. I'm sorry. I'm trying to tell me if that works. Does that work for everybody?
That seems to work.
There it is.
That work for everybody?
Right.
Okay, so, but that means if you do have questions, I guess you can, raise your hand? Is that the way?
Board members can raise them we'll take the questions at the end if there are any. Okay,
perfect. So I want to just explain what we're talking about when we talk about residential FAR caps and how they came to be, what they mean, what the current controversy is over them, and what would follow from removal of the 12 FAR cap. So let me just plunge right in to the definitions. So this is really the agenda, the kinds of questions that I believe that would be of interest to you, and questions that are the kind that are being asked all over the city and the state about residential FAR. So we'll just try to work through them. So Jesse, let's go. Okay, so what is floor area ratio? So floor area ratio is really a zoning term that's used to describe the relationship between a building's total floor area, how much floor area can be built in a building, and the area of the underlying land, the underlying lot, right? So it's basically the building area divided by the lot area equals the floor area ratio. And what the floor area ratio does is it says, look, if you have to the first illustration here, if you have a 1 FAR, 1.0 FAR, that means that if there were no other constraints, and we'll talk about that in a minute, but if there were no other constraints, you could build a building that covers 1 story, right, of the entire 100% of the lot, right? Because the floor area ratio tells you you can build at a ratio of 1 to 1. So if you have, you can cover your entire 100% of your lot, or if you choose, all other things being equal, you could choose to build 2 stories on 50% of your lot, or 3 stories on basically a third of your lot, or 4 stories on a fourth of your lot, right? And so on. Similarly, if you had less FAR, of just a half of FAR, then that would mean you could only start out by thinking about 1 story on half of the land, 2 stories on 25% of the land, 3 stories on 17% of the land. So what's critical here is that FAR is just the relationship between the size of the building, the floor area, the floor area within the building, and its relationship to the land underneath. Okay, so let me go to the next slide. So what does FAR really limit? It doesn't require that a building meet any specific dimensions, right? It doesn't tell you how to structure your building, whether to build, 4 stories, 8 stories, 12 stories in one part of the lot and 6 stories someplace else. It doesn't tell you how you must build your building. Instead, it sets the maximum square footage that you can have given the size of your lot. And it allows developers and architects and engineers flexibility in determining the specific height and the shape and the volume of the building. So what I have here is just an illustration. You've got the lot down here, and you've got a FAR of 4. That means you could cover the lot with 4 stories. You could cover half of the lot with 8 stories. You could split your building in the way that I described earlier. So it gives you flexibility to structure your building in whatever way you think is appropriate for your users, for the design, for the engineering, etc. Right? So, and FAR has to work with all kinds of other things. So we'll go to the next slide. Well, first of all, I want to make the point that the fact that you have an FAR of, let's say, 10, does not mean that you are guaranteed that you can use all that FAR, because what we call envelope constraints on the envelope in which the building has to fit. So that could mean height limits, it could mean what we call height factors, setback requirements, so buildings that come out to within 20 feet of the front lot line, and then after a certain number of stories, they have to be set back a little bit more to allow the sun to come down. Those kinds of setback requirements, side yard, front yard, rear yard requirements, open space requirements, all of those are on top of your FAR, and they could mean that even though you have 10 FAR, for example, you can't use it, right? You have to use it in conjunction with all these other constraints. And if there isn't a way to use it, given the setback requirement or given the other envelope constraints, then you can't use it, right? You can't use the full thing. So how do people imagine FAR? So the average residential FAR by community district across the city, the least dense community districts across the city, so think Staten Island, think parts of Queens, is 0.7. The most dense CDs across the city, so Upper West Side, Upper East Side, are on average 3.9, right? The average across all of the city CDs is 1.3, right? So even though you can have a very dense community district like the Upper West Side or the Upper East Side, and yet there will be parts of that neighborhood, parts of that community district that have, a townhouse, and then there will be parts of it that have a 20-story building, right? But the average across even the densest CDs in the city is just a little below 4. Okay, medium density areas. So, for example, an R8B, which is much of the area around Community Board 4. So I think there may be some R8 in Community Board 4. That's a maximum FAR of 4.0. In the highest density districts, so the Upper West Side, the Upper East Side, for example, an R10A, the maximum FAR is 10, with 12 if you provide affordable housing, mandatory inclusionary housing, right? So, and that is the limit on what FAR could be used, what buildings could be built in terms of FAR today. Okay. So why is there that limit? Basically 12 FAR, which is only used in those R10 districts for buildings that provide affordable housing, right? The New York State multiple dwelling law currently limits the FAR that can be applied to residential building to 12. That does not mean that there are no buildings above 12 FAR. Okay, there are, in fact, lots of residential buildings. Some estimates are that about 40% of our residential buildings are built above their allowable FAR. And that is because they were built before the 1961 zoning ordinance, and so they're grandfathered in at whatever their higher FAR is, right? And there are many areas, like, for example, Central Park West, that contain many buildings that are built at above 12 FAR, right? They're grandfathered in, they're non-conforming uses, they can continue to be above 12 FAR for as long as they are standing, right? The FAR cap applies only to residential buildings. There is no FAR cap for office or other commercial buildings. The city has traditionally limited office buildings to around 24, but some go up as high as 31. I wouldn't be shocked if there, maybe an example even above that, okay? So of course, let's go to the next slide. That really raises the question of, well, why do we have a 12 FAR limit on residential buildings, even though those residential buildings can be located in many of the same zones that a commercial building could be, and the commercial building could be 31 FAR, even though a residential building right next to it could only be 10 or 12 with affordable housing. And the reason, the sort of legislative history of the 12 FAR cap is that the city, of course, has a fair amount of control over its zoning, but the state has some limits, and one of the main limits is in what we call the multiple dwelling law, the law that sets a lot of the rules for higher density multifamily housing, right? Or not just higher density, but really all multifamily housing. And in 1961, the state legislature adopted, as part of the multiple dwelling law, the 12 FAR cap for residential uses. And the reason, according to the legislative history, was concern about density, right? And indeed, there were proponents of the 12 FAR cap said the reason why we need to impose this on residential buildings, but not anywhere else, is to prevent what they call vertical slums. The cap is a significant limit on what the city can do. It's a significant interference in many people's minds with the city's control over its land. It's really zoning by the state. And it gets in the way of many of the city's objectives, right? So there are many areas where there is good transit, good infrastructure, good schools, very little affordable housing, and also areas that are less dense actually than they were in 1961, but the city has nowhere to go on those buildings, on that property, other than to allow much larger commercial buildings, right? Because they can't allow residential buildings at above the 12 FAR. So let's go to the next slide. So that's what FAR is. That's why we have a cap, or the legislative history of how the cap developed. And so I think one of the real concerns about the 12 FAR cap is, what would it mean for the state to lift that cap, to basically remove the cap on residential FAR or increase it, but remove it from the multiple dwelling law? What that would mean is that it would return the issue to city control, right? Nothing would happen as a result of the state removing or increasing the 12 FAR cap until the city acted. And the city would have to go through a rezoning, which of course, as you all know, triggers ULURP, right? Has to go through the City Planning Commission, has to go through any required environmental impact review, other requirements, and then has to go through the community boards, the borough president, and then to the city council and to be enacted. So unless the city took action, the 12 FAR cap would, the 12 FAR limit would remain in place because it is baked in to all of the city's existing zoning districts, right? The zoning districts specify a maximum of 10 or 12 with mandatory inclusionary housing for even the densest, the R10s of the world. And unless that were changed, unless the city undertook to rezone a particular piece of land or rezone a particular neighborhood and put something above 12 FAR on particular pieces of property within that neighborhood, the existing 12 FAR cap would remain, right? If whatever the city does in order to lift the cap through a rezoning would trigger MIH. So MIH would apply whatever the city did to take advantage of the fact that it now had control over what the maximum FAR could be. Okay. So let me go to the next slide. And really, so a couple of points I think are important to make. One is that rezoning to allow FAR to go above 10 or 12 with mandatory inclusionary would likely be limited to those neighborhoods that are already 10, right? If they're not already 10, they already could have been raised if there was an intent to do that or a desire to do that. So it would probably be limited to the neighborhoods that already have some 10 FAR zoning. And those are, and within those neighborhoods, which are basically the Upper East Side, the Upper West Side, Midtown, the Garment Center, parts of Community Board 4, parts of the Lower East Side, downtown Brooklyn, and a few other places, right? And where within one of those districts there was good transit, job opportunities, schools and other infrastructure that could absorb the density, then those would be the only places that the city would be likely to rezone. It's the places that make sense to undertake the not easy process of rezoning to increase the allowed FAR. If the city were to undertake a rezoning and rezone an area to designate certain pieces of property or certain parts of the neighborhood as allowed to go higher than the 10 FAR or 12 FAR, then that additional FAR could not be used in historic districts, except obviously through a rezoning, but also without a certificate of appropriateness from LPC, from the Landmarks Preservation Commission. One important aspect of the FAR debate is that, as I mentioned, a lot of residential buildings are already built at above 12, right? Because they were built before 1961 and they've been grandfathered in. And in many of those buildings, there is the building may be reaching the end of its useful life, may not be a building that is appropriate for preservation, may be a building that would be more appropriate to do a complete rehab or even to demolish and build a new building, right? Owners don't do that now because they would be giving up FAR that they've already received that's non-conforming in order to now comply with the zoning. And that's become an issue, for example, with the office conversions, right? Many of the offices are way above 12 FAR, and to convert them into residential space requires that the 12 FAR for residential not be applied to those buildings, or else they won't be able to convert the space within the building all to residential use. So that sort of discouragement or disincentive to update a building, a residential building, if you would lose your non-conforming FAR, and that disincentive to convert offices into residential buildings is part of the reason why the 12 FAR debate, which has been around for a number of years, is particularly pertinent in this year where office conversions are being considered, right? Some of you may remember from the discussions about the East Midtown rezoning that one of the reasons why East Midtown you weren't seeing the office buildings sort of update was because they had excess FAR above where the current zoning would allow, and so they weren't willing to give that up by updating the building, right? And the East Midtown rezoning tried to address some of that problem. The removal of the 12 FAR cap at the state level would allow the city through a rezoning to address that problem as well. But the bottom line is nothing can happen unless the city rezones, right? The city has to take back its zoning authority and do something with that zoning authority through the ULURP process, okay? So that's the bottom line. I've tried to address the kinds of questions that that came up, but I'm happy now to answer any questions if that's okay, Jeffrey.
Thank you very much, Vicki. I appreciate you walking us through that and your time here this evening. And I see a couple of hands. And just on process, we'll take questions from the board, but not the public this evening, as I have another sort of announcement on this topic a little bit later in the meeting. So we'll start with Paul, please.
Thank you, Jeffrey. Thank you, Vicki. Great presentation. A couple of three questions for you, actually. I appreciate this conversation at the end about the conversion of overbuilt commercial. My understanding, the MDL would allow for overbuilt commercial to be converted to residential. So you're saying that's not the case. If you're above 12 FAR in commercial, it cannot be converted unless we change the state law.
Unless we change the MDL, and part of the office conversion bill, separate from legislation to change the 12 FAR residential cap could do that separately, and that's part of the discussion that's going on.
And I think my third question is going to come back to that point. You mentioned the protection of historic districts, that in order for increased FAR to exist in a historic district, would have to be rezoned. And then there's also the backstop of LPC, certificate of appropriateness. Are there any other protections for special districts? Here in Hell's Kitchen, we have the Clinton Special District, which is pretty sacrosanct to us, and we wouldn't want to see that impacted.
It would have to be rezoned through the ULURP process. I don't see that happening, but it would have to go through the regular process in order to make any changes.
Thanks. And my final question is, do you know what language is being presented to overturn the state cap at the state level? Are they saying just eliminate the cap? Are they saying eliminate the cap only in cities over 1 million, eliminate the cap only for overbuilt commercial? Do you know if there's any language? Because to be honest, the state cap does offer a backstop and guardrail for us. And just having it come to the city maybe create some other issues for us. So do you know what language is being proposed at the state to eliminate the cap?
I don't know what the current language is, right? I don't know if things are in constant flux up there as the housing package is being negotiated. And I haven't seen any language from the last few days. So,
great.
Don't know.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Paul. Up next, Lowell, please.
Hi, Vicki. How are you?
I'm good, Lowell. I miss our board meetings. So I miss
Yeah,
them.
it's not the same without you running the show.
Oh,
Part of what you, the whole thrust of this is, well, we can eliminate this at the state law, but nothing changes unless zoning changes at the city.
mhm.
My concern is that you eliminate this at the state level and the real estate developers are going to come flooding in saying we must change this at the city level because this gives us a great new opportunity. That'll end up going through ULURP, which basically puts all of this in the hands of the local council member. Since, whether or not the council still gives deference to local council members on things in their district seems to be a matter of, still up in the air a little bit, but under the way things usually work, it would mean that all of this comes down to the whims of a single council member per district. Am I reading that wrong?
Well, so councilmatic deference is certainly part of, or has been part of our process, but we have seen instances in recent years where it has been overcome. The flood center on the Upper East Side, the recent back and forth with council members where the council member backed down when the majority of the body seemed to feel differently. So I think that is in flux and changing. But also there, as anyone who's worked in the land use process knows, rezonings are not exactly easy to accomplish. And there aren't that many city council members who rush to increase density in their neighborhoods without an awful lot of planning and discussion and negotiation and efforts to increase the capacity of the infrastructure and all of those things. So I think there are limits. I don't think it's just a matter of the whims of the council member.
But if a council member wanted to do this, there'd be very little to curb or prevent that from happening. We're strictly advisory. City planning could say no, but the council member could override that if they wanted to. So that you really lose a lot of protections simply by stripping away the state law on a blanket level. I mean, we could do it surgically and keep some of those protections in place, but if you were just to blanket eliminate the 12 FAR cap, it becomes a matter of council member discretion in large part. At least that's the way it seems to me.
I think that council member discretion to block a rezoning is pretty powerful. To push a rezoning that city planning doesn't think is appropriate, or that other colleagues in city council don't think is appropriate. So for example, you could certainly, it's hard to imagine city council members lining up and saying, we'd like to increase things to 14 FAR or whatever. But assuming that one did, you would have other council members who would say, I'm worried about what that will do to the subway that runs from my neighborhood into your neighborhood, or vice versa. I'm concerned about what it does, you know, in all kinds of ways. So I think there are more checks than I think I'm not willing to say it's totally at the whim of the city council member. There are just more checks than that.
Because it did happen.
Well, I just want to, I appreciate the question. We're moving away from policy into politics, and I appreciate that, but I do want to just keep the questions going tonight because we're still in the first agenda item of our meeting. So all the thoughts appreciated, but I do want to move on to the next question.
The example I'm giving, Jeffrey, did in fact exactly happen in our
No,
district.
Lowell, I understand, but that was political. It was not policy, and we're here to talk policy this evening. And I have no doubt.
Jeffrey, when you find a way to
politics.
divorce policy from politics in this city, you let me know.
I would be happy to do so, but right now I'm going to take the next question, Mr. Kern, which is coming from Mr. Holoka. David, the floor is yours.
Hi, thank you for the presentation, Vicki. I have two questions. One is simple, the other a little more nuanced. First, how many affordable housing units have been created in the city through MIH?
So the last numbers that I saw is that at the end of the de Blasio administration, at the end of 2021, 4,000 had already been completed or were about to be completed, and another about 10,000 had been approved. They haven't been publishing the numbers in the mayor's management report, so I haven't been able to get an updated number from them.
Okay, yeah, we're very concerned about affordable housing here in Chelsea and Hell's Kitchen, not so much about simply adding housing to New York. And the neighborhoods that already have the R10 zoning, you mentioned the Upper East Side and the Upper West Side, those are the densest neighborhoods in America. And the other neighborhoods you mentioned, I think it's the R10 is overwhelmingly on the Upper East and Upper West Side. And even the other neighborhoods you mentioned are very desirable neighborhoods where no one seems to build anything but luxury housing. And, you know, these days it means huge apartments, buildings with vast apartments in them, rather than a large number of units. And, you know, given the kind of weak performance of MIH, how would raising that cap serve the creation of affordable housing? And, you know, I'll bear in mind that the city has neighborhoods that are served by subways that have freestanding single family houses on them. That, you know, there are billions of square feet of unbuilt area where affordable housing could be built in New York. So how would raising the FAR cap of 12 serve the creation of affordable housing?
So the way that it serves the creation of affordable housing is through MIH, and I disagree that MIH has had weak performance. MIH depends upon rezonings. That's what triggers it, right? And so to the extent that we can't get rezonings, back to the question of the difficulty of doing that, then we're limited in the MIH. But where we rezone, we will always, under the city's MIH policy, we will always be getting affordable housing. So that's one thing. The second thing is that these are dense areas, no question about it. They're some of the densest in the United States, perhaps the densest. There are a couple places in LA that may mirror. But actually, they've lost a lot of density since 1961 when the 12 FAR cap came into play, in part because, as some of you know, a lot of buildings, especially in historic districts, have been converted back from, you know, a 5-family building into a 1-family or a 2-family building. So there have been a number of units that have been lost that way. There have been other units that have been lost as well. So they're not at the density that they have been in the past. Now, that's not necessarily the, you know, the touchstone or the baseline, but but it's an important thing to note that they were built for higher density in the past. You are completely right, and I want to say that Community Board 4 has been amazing, and every report that the Furman Center has done in recent years has shown that you are the leader among affordable housing, and that is incredible. The leader certainly in Manhattan and in many parts of the city. And I do think that all of those other neighborhoods, also well served by transit, also well served by other infrastructure, should be asked to step up as well. I think that's one of the advantages of the governor's housing compact, is that it requires every single community district to step up in ways that Community Board 4 has really been a leader.
Thank you.
Thanks for the question, David. Up next, Matt Green, please.
Thanks, Jeffrey. Hi, Vicki. Appreciate the really clear and concise presentation. My question is, you mentioned a rezoning would likely be limited to areas that could handle the additional density. I'm just wondering if you've heard any discussions happening if the 12 FAR cap was lifted, would there be sort of a reevaluation of like the potential environmental impacts? I'm thinking more about like school seats, improved transit, understanding it will likely happen in these areas that can handle it, but in areas where there aren't, are these things sort of being looked at together in a way in which we're considering sort of the environmental impact of more density in these areas?
Yes, so if there was a rezoning, there would have to be an environmental impact review, an environmental impact statement. So yes, absolutely. There is some discussion, which may be what's motivating your question. There is some discussion about limiting environmental impact review for certain kinds of new proposals. I have never seen that. I've never heard any discussion of that being applied to neighborhood-wide rezonings. And I've only seen it being applied I've seen it being applied, or seen it being proposed for 100% affordable buildings and some smaller buildings. But otherwise, environmental impact review would remain.
Thanks, Matt. We'll go to Candace next, but just to note that Christine will have the last question. Candace?
Hi, thank you, Jeff and Vicki. My question was about the I cannot speak. Envelope constraints.
Mhm.
Who decides that?
Who does that? The City Planning Commission and the City Council. So that's part of any rezoning. And so if a rezoning were passed, for example, to raise from, let's say, 12 with MIH to 14 with MIH, that could be accompanied with height restrictions. It could be accompanied with different kinds of, side yard, those kinds of things. That's all part of the rezoning package.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Candace. And finally, Christine?
Yes, thank you for this great presentation. At a point of time, you mentioned that there was a separate package beyond the removal of the cap. Could you explain that a little bit?
Well, I could try, Christine, but it's very much in flux, and I am not up there in the know. But the governor proposed what she called a housing compact, which would require that every community in New York State step up to provide more housing because of the housing supply crisis. In areas upstate that aren't served by the MTA, it would require that they permit by 1% of their existing housing stock every 3 years. Downstate, areas served by the MTA and Long Island Railroad would be required to grow or to permit the growth of 3% over 3 years. And that would apply in New York City to every community district. So outside of the city, every jurisdiction, every town, village, locality, etc., would have to grow And in the city, every community district would have to grow, okay? And that would be, there would be it's a complicated package, but that's the bottom line, okay? The other things that are being discussed are changing the MDL, the multiple dwelling law, to allow offices to be converted into housing in a broader swath of the city. The zoning resolution already permits pre-1961 buildings in some areas of Manhattan to be converted into offices. It would extend that to pre-1990, I think. I'm sorry, I've got it's the Village. I've got wrap outside my or something outside of my window. So office conversions are part of it. There was a proposal for transit-oriented development that would, in areas, well, you know, a certain distance from transit stations, would be required to provide more capacity for growth. That, my understanding is no longer on the table. And there also have been pieces, which I don't know where they stand. I don't know where any of this really stands, to extend the time that some developments had to qualify for the tax exemption, 421A tax exemption, where they hit roadblocks because of the pandemic and because of the financing hurdles that have come into play as a result of the delay of the pandemic. Those are the main pieces that I know. There's also proposals for a just cause protection for tenants, and I think those are the main parts of the package. But again, it's all being negotiated behind closed doors. I'm not in the know as to where any of those stand.
Vicki, I promise I didn't bring you here this evening to answer questions about Albany behind, you know, closed doors discussions. So I thank you.
Talk about politics.
Yeah. Thank you so much for being here tonight, for entertaining the questions and providing a very academic and educational presentation. I really appreciate it, and I think we all do. And again, thanks for stepping back into public service this evening as well. It's nice to see you. So
always a pleasure for Community Board 4, because I really do admire all the ways in which you've stepped up to from the Chelsea Fulton work to identifying properties for affordable housing. So thank you for all you do. Okay?
Thanks, Vicki. Appreciate that. Have a great night.
You too.
With that, we will move to the next item on our agenda, which is our public hearing for the evening, which is regarding the new rules put out by the Department of Sanitation, set out for a time change at which trash, recycling, and compost goes to the curb. The change is that residential buildings of any size, single family and multifamily, have two options: public waste out after 6 p.m. in a container of 55 gallons or less with a secure lid, or place the waste out after 8 p.m. if putting bags directly on the curb. I would note this also does apply to commercial establishments. We did not have any advanced signups for this hearing in advance, but I just need to give a moment to see if anybody does want to specifically speak on the topic of the new rule now in effect from the Department of Sanitation regarding trash set out times. Seeing no hands, I am now pleased to pass it over to our first vice chair for the public session, Jessica Chait, who will lay the ground rules for this evening's public session, as there are a number of speakers signed up to speak on one item, which I will note there will be discussion and debate later on this in the meeting. And so Jessica, I pass it over to you.
Great. Thank you so much, Jeffrey. Good evening, everyone. Great to see you, enjoying some of the sunlight as we have this lovely evening. We are, as Jeffrey mentioned, the ground rules are, we'll have 2 minutes per speaker. As many people have signed up for issues regarding 11th Avenue and the Liquor License Club up for discussion later there. We're going to start with other items of business. And so we'll go do that, and then we'll turn to 11th Avenue. We'll ask that everyone do their best not to repeat any issues. Of course, we want to hear from everybody, but if someone has said something already, you can just let us know that you are echoing their statements so we can move on to the business portion of our meeting. With that, we'll start with Charlie Dulick. And then just as a heads up, then we'll go to Jacqueline Lara.
Hi, hello everyone. Hope everyone's having a good night. I am here just introducing myself. I am the new Director of Organizing at Housing Conservation Coordinators. For those of you who are not familiar, HCC is a decades-old organization on the West Side fighting for tenants' rights. Has a lot of legal service programs, tenant organizing, and I am excited about getting tenant organizing stuff off the ground here. So just wanted to introduce myself to folks on CB4 and in the community. If you have questions about any tenant related issues, looking for legal service providers, a building that needs to get organized, don't hesitate to reach out, and I can give my email is cdulik@hcc-nyc.org, or our website is housingconservationcoordinators.org. So hoping to be back on these meetings soon. Thanks.
Great, thanks, Charlie. Welcome. We'll go to Jacqueline Lara, and then just Lisa Wager, if you can hear us, Jesse needs you to accept the invite. So we'll give that one more try. Jacqueline, are you there?
She accepted, I believe.
I see her name.
Yeah, she's there. She's just on mute and off camera. I can't make, she has to take herself off. You want to move on to Bobby?
Sure.
Good evening,
Bobby.
everyone.
Hi, Bobby. Go ahead.
How you doing? Thank you, everyone, again. My name is Bobby Vancilatos. I'm the center manager at the Chelsea Recreation Center. Just wanted to touch base tonight on 4 items for this month. This Thursday from 4 to 8 p.m. we have a table tennis tournament. It's open to adults. If you're interested in playing, just give us a call at the Recreation Center and we can put you down on the list. Tuesday, April 30th, we have a Silent Soca fitness festival. So we're going to be using headphones. You'll be listening to 3 different transponders led by a fitness session from one of our instructors. There's going to be 2 sessions. One's from 6 to 6:45 and the other is from 7 to 7:45. The next day, April 21st, we're going to be celebrating Earth Day with our youth club. All kids are welcome for the event. We're going to have hands-on activities that takes a look at how we impact the environment. We're going to learn about the depletion of natural resources, pollution, and we're going to talk about some best practices we can put in place to be good stewards to the planet. And finally, on Saturday, April 29th, from 12 to 4 p.m., we're going to be hosting a job fair at the Recreation Center. It's not only going to be NYC Parks, we're going to have a lot of other city agencies like FDNY, DCAS, MTA. So there'll be a lot of job opportunities and open positions for anyone that's interested from the community. So that's all I had for today. Thank you for your time and hope to see everyone around.
Thank you, Bobby. All right, Jacqueline, I think you came off mute. Can you
hear me?
We can hear you. Go ahead. Your 2 minutes will start now.
All right. Hi, perfect. My name is Jacqueline Lara. I'm a resident at Fulton Houses, and I have some concerns with the new developer we have. On 2019, we protested for no demolition and we won that. And then de Blasio put the working group and for RAD, and everybody made a big case out of it. For 2.5 years, you guys had this working group going, and then in conclusion, there was no demolition. RAD is supposed to be on the table. And now we have this developer that's saying that he didn't know that this developments were so rotten, and now he's making a proposal of demolishing all the buildings. And that's unacceptable. I mean, what happened? And he's saying that this is going to cost 1.2 billion. Where there's a loophole somewhere in there. Why so much money from 366 million? That's that, and I need somebody to investigate what's going on here.
Thank you, Jacqueline. I assure you our committee is, and our group is following this issue very closely, and we take your comments seriously.
I hope so, but thank you.
Thank you, Jacqueline. Thank you for coming tonight. We'll go to Lisa Wager. Hector, I see your hand. We'll add you to the end of the remarks.
Hi, everyone. Hi, everyone. Happy spring. My name is Lisa Wager. I'm the Director of Government Community Relations for the Fashion Institute of Technology, the SUNY College, on 27th between 7th and 8th at the edge of the district, serving people from the city, the state, and around the world. Just a few things on the FIT update. We just wrapped up our 17th annual two-day Sustainable Business and Design Conference, which was held in person this year for the first time, but it was also available virtually. First time since 2019, excuse me. The theme was Ideas at Work, to emphasize the way sustainability innovation is translating into action. And if you're interested in seeing one or more of the panels, they're linked on the FIT website, which is fitnyc.edu. You may have missed this year's Justice Film Festival, for which FIT was a viewing location for the first time, but we'll be showing the film Till on Tuesday, April 18th at 6:30. The screening will be followed by a conversation with writer and executive producer Keith Beauchamp. It's based on the true story of Mamie Till Mobley. Till depicts her pursuit of justice after the murder of her 14-year-old son Emmett in 1955. The film uses 27 years worth of research by Beauchamp, whose efforts led to the reopening of the Till case by the U.S. Department of Justice. And it stars Danielle Deadweiler as Mamie Till Bradley, with Frankie Faison, who was in The Wire, and Whoopi Goldberg and others in supporting roles. And the FIT screening room is the size of a small movie theater. So if you're interested, you may want to get your free ticket early, and you just go to Eventbrite and put in Till. And just wrapping up, our summer pre-college sessions opened for registration last week. They're all taught by FIT faculty in the FIT facilities, and they're available at public college prices, i.e. they're quite affordable. Speaking as a parent who raised kids in the city, it's a fantastic summer option. The courses range from advertising and marketing communication. They're for high school and middle school, and you can take some that span 10 weeks, or you can take a 1-week intensive, or you can take something that just is 3 days. There are all sorts of ways to chop and dice it up. Advertising and marketing communication, animation, fashion design, digital photography, comic book art, game design, digital short films, figure drawing, jewelry design, screen printing, shoe and bag construction, and fine arts portfolio, which addresses to some degree the dearth of arts education in our New York City public schools, so that students in middle school who want to apply to an arts high school can create a portfolio, and the same for high school students who want to apply to an fine arts program in a public or other college that would be like SVU or RISD.
Thank you, Lisa. Thank you. We'll go to Missy Adams, and then we'll be followed by Stephen Herring.
Yeah, unmute. Hi, everyone. My name is Missy Adams, and I'm with the Chelsea Garden Club. I just wanted to comment briefly on, it's a sanitation issue. First, we garden we're volunteers, a large group of volunteers who plant, pay on our own, and maintain the bicycle lane tree pits on 7th. Well, there's one on 7th, but 8th and 9th Avenues between 30th and around 16th or 17th. And we've been having a lot of difficulty of the past few months with sanitation because they keep putting the trash cans, and it seems very purposeful. I'm a little paranoid anyway, but we're having a bit of a tussle with them because they keep putting the trash cans right up against the gardens. Sometimes in the gardens, in my particular pit, they're pushing over some flower boxes in order to get the trash can there. And I've talked to them. I've talked individually to them to say, put it across away from the garden because we'll get rats. We get people throwing trash in the garden. We get the liquids that comes out of the trash can going into and around the garden. It's disgusting. And there's a really simple solution. One of our members wants to put it, have it go back on the corner, and I think is making a big deal about that. But when I talked to sanitation, I said there's a compromise. It can go, because I know they have a hard time going down the bicycle lanes. So it can go on this sliver of concrete next to the pedestrian crossing, and it's no extra effort. But they seem hell bent on putting it right up against the flowers. And I really don't know how to reach them. I've had the guy at the district office hang up on me because he thought I was interrupting him when I was actually agreeing with him. So they're just incredibly hostile. So I need
Thank
help.
you for bringing it here. We'll send an email. I have your email address from your sign up. We'll connect you with Jesse Bodine, who's our district manager, and he will help you navigate and negotiate this for resolution. Thank you for coming. We'll go to Stephen Herring.
Hi. I hope I'm not out of order, but I'd like to talk about the Tri-Alpha Inc. Is that all right?
Oh, if that's the case, then we'll, if you don't mind, we'll do a couple others. We'll come back to you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Great. Thank you for that. Thank you. We'll go to Hector, and then we'll check in on Christine Gorman, see what her is seeing as she didn't sign up, if her issue is.
Hi, everybody. Good evening. My name is Hector Vasquez, and I'm also a member of Community Board 4, as well as a resident of Fulton Houses. And I just wanted to address shortly the questions that were raised by Jackie earlier. Basically, this has basically been tenant driven. Everything's been out in the open. There's no hidden agenda here. The figures speak for themselves. If an individual wants to learn more, they just need to come to the meetings that we've already set up, which are numerous meetings via the tenants association, via the redevelopers. We've had tours. A lot of people are very excited about the project and the changes. And it wasn't forced on us. We were actually given 3 different options along with the original rehab idea as well. Okay, so, and it's not a done deal yet. Basically, we have time to change our mind about it if we want to, but it is tenant driven. No one else is making us do this. I just wanted to make that clear. And if anybody is a tenant of Fulton or LHLC, they're more than welcome to attend these meetings and find out the reality of what's happening here. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Hector. Christine Gorman and Christy, maybe you can just state your issue, like what the topic of your comments.
Sure thing. Christine Gorman, I'm the president of the West 55th Street Block Association. 2 issues that are very strongly felt on West 55th Street that I'd like to bring up. And then this just happened on Monday, March 27th. A woman who appeared to be of Filipina descent was attacked randomly for no reason. To say a number of employees of Gristedes, it happened right in front of Gristedes, ran out to help her. And the perpetrator, as I understand it, was held until.
Christine, you're breaking up a little bit. Maybe you want to consider turning off your video so we can just hear you a bit better.
I want to thank the police from Midtown North for showing up so quickly, but it was very upsetting. One of my neighbors witnessed this.
Christine, I'm so sorry. We are not able to hear you.
Okay.
Well, I think we should follow up. I mean, I'd love to better understand the issue that you're raising. And so maybe we can follow up with your office, with you separately.
Okay. Do you have chat enabled? I could also put it in the chat.
We do not.
What if I called in on the phone?
We can hear you
You're
now,
welcome.
Christine,
You're-
so you're doing fine now, so why don't we, you took your.
Okay,
agenda.
all right. So I wanted to let you know that the West 55th Street Block Association is working with Hell's Kitchen Democrats to provide upstander training, what to do if you witness a hate attack. The training is free to everyone who wants to register. And I will send the registration information to you. It's April 13th from 7 to 8:30 on Zoom. And as I said, this is a big concern now on West 55th Street. This is not the first incident we've had on our block or obviously in our neighborhood, as we know. The other issue I wanted to bring up is the Ersatz pot shop that seems to be going on forward at 301 West 55th. This is a residential block. And there was a stop order order that apparently
Christine, we can't hear you.
Okay. I will send that.
I'll
Yeah,
follow
you-
up with you, Christine, directly, and let's work on that issue, the cannabis issue.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Christine. Thank you. Okay, we are going to turn now to the issue of the nightclub on 11th Avenue. We'll start with Stephen, who generously agreed to wait, and we'll just ask again everyone to be limited to 2 minutes and try to spare repeating what the previous person indicated, though we do want to hear your voice if this is an important issue to you. Stephen, go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Stephen Bodine, I'm the co-chair of the HK 4954 Block Association. And of course, I'm speaking about Tri-Alphas, which is looking for, excuse me? Oh, Tri-Alphas.
Sorry, we were, okay, sorry, Stephen, we were doing Stephen Herring, but you.
Oh, someone brought me in. I'm sorry.
Sorry, we were just in, sorry, but it's okay. Sorry, you go ahead. Thanks, Stephen Herring. Thank you for your continued patience.
Okay, so again, Tri-Alpha, 627 11th Avenue. We've been to a couple of block associations. We've spoken with them, the applicant. They've yet to give us definite answers. First, they needed to have 2,500 people inside and 750 on the roof. Otherwise, that wouldn't work. We asked them about fire escape issues, fire hazards. They couldn't give us any answers. Their lawyer specifically tried to obfuscate and tell us there was no residential housing there, when in fact, directly across the street, there's residential housing. And now they're down to 750 people. They said now they can make it work with 750 from, 3,000 people. They still haven't given us answers on sound. They may have given it to the board by now, I'm not sure. But egress from the property, there's not enough doors there. They've never run a business like this before, and we just figure will overwhelm 11th Avenue, and there'll be no room for affordable housing because no one's going to want to be there with all these people on the street and inside and the noise. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen. Okay, Stephen Herring, thank you for your patience.
No problem, no problem. So I'm a member of the 47th, 48th Streets Block Association. And on March 6th, I attended a meeting with Tri-Alpha Inc. I left the meeting with more questions than answers. The same thing happened the next day when they attended our block association meeting and attempted to further plead their case. I have to say, I'm really concerned that there is no amended certificate of occupancy. There's no acoustical report or sound study, and no business or construction plans have been submitted. For these reasons, I want to go on the record of saying that I oppose Tri-Alpha's application. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen. We're going to move to Larry Roberts.
Hey, everybody. Larry Roberts from West 47th Street. First of all, I wanted to point out that 627 11th Avenue is probably within 325 feet of 621 West 46th Street, which was the former Hudson Terrace. And if those with a long memory will remember that we were in court at SLA with 621 for a couple of years, and it actually prompted Senator Squadron into revising the 500-foot rule. So I wanted to point out that there's another venue, large venue, Clinton Mercantile at 639 West 46th Street, currently listed at 505 feet away. But since the applicant is going to have to add additional doors, entrances, and exits for up to 750 people, that would then be within 500 feet of Clinton Mercantile. So you have already Clinton Mercantile with a 712-foot capacity, HK Hall, 1,600 capacity, and Harbor, New York City, the former Hudson Terrace, with a 600-person capacity. That's a total of almost 3,000 already. And this applicant has called this area of Hell's Kitchen somewhat desolate and a ghetto. You know, really resent that, you know, and I think our community resents it all also. So I would hope that the board would deny this application. Thank you.
Thank you, Larry. We're going to move to Leslie Woodruff, followed by Elka.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm going to bring her over now. I apologize. I thought you accepted.
No problem.
I believe is over. If you want to go with Elka, and then Leslie can go right after.
Sure. Thank you, Jesse. Elka?
Okay, maybe not.
Elka, you'll just need to take yourself off mute.
Leslie's joining as we speak.
Oh, and looks like we lost Elka.
Thank you. Hi.
Yeah, go ahead.
Hi, I'm in transit, so I apologize for the background noise. I just wanted to concur with my neighbors about concerns about this nightclub. I do remember the days of Pasha nightclub, and I remember all of the challenges it brought to our neighborhood, drug deals up and down the block throughout the night, increased traffic, parking issues for folks who actually lived in the neighborhood. There were lewd and lascivious acts taking place in the shadows, vomit and urine up and down the sidewalks. And that was all back when I was young and carefree and did not have a child. And that's not what I want my child to see in the neighborhood. As a parent, I represent Hell's Kitchen families, and we would love for this proposed nightclub to not get a green light. Thank you.
Thank you, Leslie. Okay, now we'll go to Elka.
Hi, I'm Elka Fears, president of the West 47 48th Streets Block Association. You've already heard many reasons to oppose the liquor applications for Tri-Alpha. For example, the 4 a.m. closing 7 days a week. No one seems to be concerned on the committee meeting. Insufficient acoustical report for the first floor. But I'd like to add that this site is in an M2-4 zoning district and also in the western sub area of the special Clinton district. The applicant did not acknowledge this on his application. And according to the 2022 NYC Building Code, the change of 627 11th Avenue from a car dealership, a business B group, is a use group 16 to a use that has dancing and a capacity of 750 people would be classified as an A2 or assembly occupancy and would be in zoning use group 12A. Hence, an amended certificate of occupancy would be required, as well as a public assembly permit. The applicant claims they don't need a change to the CFO or ask for a public assembly permit. Obviously, this is wrong. The applicant also claims there are no residential buildings nearby, when in fact there's a residential building on the corner of West 47th and 11th Avenue, catty corner to this location. And speaking of residential buildings, CB4 has and still is working diligently to change the zoning on the east side of 11th Avenue to allow for affordable housing, with the hope that the rezoning of the west side of 11th will follow at some point. The building directly across the street from 627 is empty and ripe for residential use. Now, of course, this begs the question, who would want to live across the street from a club that closes at 4 a.m. 7 days a week? So I asked the community board members, what's more urgent? Another club for 750 people closing at 4 a.m. every day, or affordable housing? Thank you.
Bruno and Tom.
We'll do so in a second.
Thanks.
Bruno's joining now.
Yeah. Good evening, Bruno. If you want to come off mute.
Yep. Can you hear me?
Yeah, you have 2 minutes.
Hi, my name is Bruno Reljic, and I'm representing owner and the applicant in the 627 11th Avenue. I just want to go over a few things that I just heard from some board members. So I'm not sure if they're there. There is already plans they're asking for. They've been submitted by 27th, as it was agreed. There was a soundproofing, there was a security plan, even sound studies done there by reputable New York companies. So that's all done. I don't think they checked the Dropbox. Everything was done on the time. I also want to mention that building across, which is commercial historic building across, it's not residential building, on east side of 11th between 47 and 46. So those few facts are just not correct from board members. On the other side, I want to mention there is a block on a 46 and between 45th and 46. The whole block is owned by a person who tried to sell it. It's under bankruptcy. It's not going to be done in next several years. So west side of 11th Avenue, not sure how soon is going to be residential. Also, I want to mention the good reason why this club should be open is because we don't nighttime when you're passing there. I don't want to say it's a ghetto, but there is no action at all. I'm passing there every day with my dog. I don't see people. It's pretty sketchy to walk there. So I think some business like this would just make this area more alive. Other than that, they were saying something about that we started with one number, we came to 750. Yes, we completely reconstructed the original plan of operating, and we came down to 750 people, and more, we don't know, is it going to be 750? It might be 500. We don't know. That's going to be done by fire department eventually. But what we're trying to do here, also a garbage situation that was mentioned before, they'll be planning to do refrigerated garbage special room that is going to be inside until the garbage trucks are coming in. Other than that,
Bruno, that's your 2 minutes. Thank you. Thank you for coming. We'll move to Tom Kyler. Kaler, excuse me.
No worries. Tommy with us?
How's that? Am I unmuted now?
We hear you. Go ahead, Tom. Oh, we heard you. It seems you put yourself back on mute.
Am I on now?
You are on now.
Okay. I just wanted to echo my neighbor's concerns about this operation, and just to answer the owner here who just addressed us. I did read extensively his audio report, and the audio report says no audio abatement is required for that downstairs space because of the glass windows. The audio tests were done at 3:00 p.m. in the afternoon, of course, when 11th Avenue is rather jammed up with tunnel traffic. And it doesn't account for at all the fact that the doors are going to be opening and closing continuously all night long. And what happens to that sound when those doors open and close? That wasn't addressed in their audio report at all. So I find this application to be disingenuous at best and would appreciate it very much if you folks would vote no. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. And we're going to move to, and apologies if I'm pronouncing this incorrectly, but I believe it's McDonough.
Yeah, Anita McDonough, thank you.
Go ahead.
I did not attend the BLP hearing, and I am here today because of information that I read online. I had to speak tonight because BLP misstepped. The capacity went from 2,000 interior and 2,500 rooftop to whittled down to 750 count. I read that the property could not be converted to businesses as the rent is too high. Another fact that I read was the entry fee. It went from 100 to 20. With this drastic cut in occupancy, the high rent, and the entry price differential, BLP should have asked for a feasibility study. I noticed that the interior acoustic report wasn't part of the application. Tri-Alpha was allowed to submit the report on March 27th. What happened to allowing the public enough time to study the application? This deficiency should have automatically triggered a request to the applicant to return the following month. The operators, investors claim to be well known in the industry. Well, why not ask them to include their bios? This is a huge project. People in the community need to know who these operators are. I'm against the 4 a.m. 7-day close.
Okay.
Pardon?
Thank you. Never mind, keep on going, Anita. Thank you.
I'm against the 4 a.m. 7-day close. I'm against this proposal. I'm against adding another liquor license to our neighborhood. And I kindly ask CB4 to overturn BLP's endorsement. Thank you for allowing me to speak.
Thank you. We're going to move to Katie Savage, followed by Richard. We do still have several other speakers, so we'll ask that people keep their remarks brief. Go ahead, Katie.
Hi, my name is Katie Savage. I am the co-chair of HK 4954 Block Alliance with Steve Belita, who spoke first. Many of my neighbors have expressed a lot of the similar sentiments that I have. Mainly, it's that this plan was not fully thought out. There were a lot of changes that took place and no substantiation for how they came up with their occupancy. You can't say, I want a liquor license and I'll fill out the details later. And furthermore, this venue is located in an area of the far west side that CB4 has requested to be rezoned for residential use since 2009. This position was reaffirmed in 2015 when it was added to CB4's affordable housing plan, where it remains in the most recent 2022 version. We are finally at a point where there is the necessary political will to make this zoning change. So why would the board prioritize approving a large nightclub in a location that has never had a liquor license, which would end up being grandfathered into any future rezoning? As Elka said, what's more important, continuing to push for this area to be used for more housing or one nightclub? I also would like to point out that both co-chairs of the BLP committee voted no to approve this application. And I think that is very important to note. And that is all. I really hope you guys vote no on item 10. Thank you.
Thank you, Katie. We're going to go to Richard Morans, followed by Thomas.
Hi, thank you for hearing us all. My comments pretty much mirror most of my neighbors. We're appalled at the size of this, the chaotic approach that this group has made with the changing numbers. There's no one on the roof. There's 500 people on the roof. Now there's 250 people on the roof. The fact that they don't think that they need to change the C of O, despite opinions to the contrary, and the general disorganization, lack of experience operating nightclubs like this in New York would dictate that we've got chaos coming. If these folks are allowed to continue, we ask you to please turn this down. Thank you.
Thank you. Thomas, followed by Nancy. Thomas, you'll need to take yourself off mute. If not, we can go to Nancy.
There we go. Sorry about that.
Okay.
I couldn't,
Go ahead.
it wasn't showing on my screen. I'll be very brief because this is a long meeting already. I've been living in this neighborhood now for 35 years. I've been a building manager for 25 years. I've lived through Sound Factory in Pasha, and I know the horrible effects that it's had in the neighborhood. And I just want to add my voice to saying, let's not do this. Thank you.
Thank you, Thomas. Nancy, and then we'll bring Michelle over, and that will then conclude our public session. Nancy?
Hi, I'm Nancy Roylance. Thank you for giving me this chance to speak. I'm a member of the West 47th 48th Streets Block Association, and I just really want to add my voice to all the voices you've heard from our community, who have all been much more articulate about this and much more knowledgeable than I can. But I strongly urge you to deny the application to Tri-Alpha.
Thank you, Nancy. And Michelle, you will close us out.
Hi, thank you for having me. I am a resident of 47th Street, and I am just calling in to say that I agree with my fellow Hell's Kitchen neighbors who have spoken tonight and all the comments that they have made, and I strongly oppose the nightclub proposal on 11th and 48th. Quickly, with regards to the nightclub spokesperson's argument that it's, quote, creepy that our streets are quiet at night, I would say that it is lovely that we live in a neighborhood where it is quiet at night. I would like to keep it that way, and I ask that the board oppose this project. Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle, and thank you to all of our guests this evening. That will conclude our public session. Back to you, Chair.
Thank you, Jessica. Appreciate it. And for everybody being here this evening to participate in our public session. Up next tonight, adoption of the agenda. Are there any questions on the agenda? Hearing none, I'll take a motion to adopt, please.
So moved.
Thank you, Paul. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Carrie. Any objections? The agenda is adopted. On to minutes with thanks to Katie and Roberta. Any questions on the minutes from our March full board meeting? Hearing none, I'll take a motion to adopt, please.
Motion to adopt.
Thank you, Bert. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Candace. Any objections? Great, the minutes are adopted. Also, always have those mics open for quick calls of motions on the agenda and minutes. I want to go over next to reports from our elected officials this evening. We will start with the good council member who is here, and I want to pass the microphone right over to him. Councilmember Bottcher.
Thank you, Jeffrey. Hi, everyone. I'll be brief. I know we have a packed meeting tonight. We just wrapped up our second cycle of participatory budgeting, and I'm excited to say that we have 50% more votes than last year. And I really want to thank Jordan Feiner and everyone on the team and all of you who participated. We had a lot of exciting projects, including the comfort station at Matthews Palmer, which I'm, I can't be biased, but I'm just saying that was one of the candidates. That's all I'm saying. We cut the ribbon on the completion of the 9th Avenue water main project, water and gas main project, which was going on. I can't even remember when it started. It seemed like a lot longer than 2014 or whatever it was, but it was finally finished, and it included the street design that Christine and all of you, and Dale and all of you helped craft. We, however, have already been seeing a lot of issues with things other than pedestrians using the space that's dedicated to pedestrians, bikes and vehicles. So today, we sent a letter signed by all our elected colleagues to DOT Commissioner Rodriguez, formally requesting him to partner with us to find solutions to that. Because, you know, the super sidewalk, if you will, is a relatively new concept for a lot of people. So I think there's some education involved, there's some enforcement involved, and maybe, you know, even some physical infrastructure involved to help us make it successful. But we've been getting a lot of people are really love it, but it needs to be for pedestrians. 2 weeks ago, my colleagues and I introduced a package of legislation at the City Council with respect to sidewalk scaffolding. And it's a huge problem. No other city in the world has as much sidewalk scaffolding as New York City. We have hundreds and hundreds of miles of it. My 3 bills that I introduced, one will establish a time limit from when the scaffolding goes up to when the property owner has to pull the building permits. I have another bill that will increase the lighting requirements underneath scaffolding. The current lighting requirements predate the technology like LED lighting, and we've got 10-foot long light strips that we didn't have when the original, so it'll increase the number of lumens needed underneath scaffolding. And a third bill of mine will establish a higher design standards when a sidewalk, shed, or scaffolding is in a park or a playground. This was inspired by the infamous scaffolding in Matthew Palmer Park on the basketball court, which is still up. The good news is that apparently the co-op that wall belongs to is finally doing the work. There was a long legal dispute about whose job it was to do it. It is being done, but I have a bill that going forward, those kind of, when it is in a park, it'll have to have a higher design standard. And I will just leave it with that in the interest of time.
Councilmember, thank you so much. 2 things. Thank you for that letter to DOT about the super sidewalks, of which we are very excited about, but obviously appreciate the call for action. And then second, I'm just concerned, Eric, that you're never going to top your April Fool's joke that you did this year. So kudos to you, my friend, on that. And the bar is very high from your own making. So I was caught in the joke, as many others were as well. So well played, sir.
I got a lot of angry messages for proposing to ban toilet paper. People were really upset.
Well played.
Yeah.
If you don't
Only
mind,
1 or 2
a question.
people agreed with it. Everyone else pretty much.
If you don't mind, a quick couple of questions. Hector?
Hello, Eric. How you doing?
Hey.
Thanks for being at the, taking on the helm of the scaffolding issues that we've been having for a long time. One of the things I want to bring up is the scaffolding around schools, because I know you mentioned parks and other areas, but what about schools like PS11 in our community board over here at CB4? That scaffolding's been up there for quite a while, and there's also been a lot of criminal activity there where people have been caught doing really lewd things underneath the stairs next to the building, right next to the school, and there's been drug activity around there too during the day while school is still active. So it's kind of appalling at what's going on there.
Yeah, there is one of my colleagues has a bill that would heighten the design standards for all scaffolding, and the bill that we have is kind of layered on top of that says for like public amenities like parks or playgrounds, and I would include schools in that. There should be an even higher design standard. So we'll ensure that schools are specifically spelled out in that. But one of the most important things is in all of these bills is just to reduce the number of these. And one of my colleagues, Keith Powers, has a bill that will allow for the use of drones to inspect bricks. We have technology that we could be using instead of having to go climb up there and physically inspect. Mark Levine has bills that would differentiate between building types. You don't need to do local 11 for a glass and steel building as often as you do for a terracotta building. So this is common sense stuff, and collectively, I'm hoping that this will reduce the amount of sidewalk sheds in New York City.
Thanks, Eric.
Thanks, Eric. Christine with a final question.
Eric, I want to thank on your staff, Jordan Feiner, who is really doing a terrific job of helping us remove illegal open restaurants. We love the good ones, but the ones which are illegal, we really need help with the DOT, and Jordan is doing a terrific job with that. Thank you so much.
Thank you. They really are. They really are great.
All right, council member. Back to the good work. We appreciate you being here this evening, and we'll see you soon.
Thanks, everybody.
Up next, we have Yiyi Wang from the Borough President's Office, Borough President Mark Levine's representative. Yi?
Hi, everybody. Happy Easter. Thank you, Council Member Eric Barcher, for mentioning the scaffolding. Actually, Mark, we do have a report on our website, and also Mark has a video featuring about the scaffolding. The report he did is the shed. If you want to take a close look about this matter, you can just go to our website, manhattanbp.nyc.gov/initiatives/shed. Speaking of that, we have a new website, and if you go to our website, you will find a brand new design and everything. And also we have a new function that you can just post. You can also see, and you can also post community events on our website. So if you have anything, you can just register our website, and you just post your community event on our website. That'll be very helpful to monitor the community events in our community. Okay, let's talk about some good news, which is the community board application. So we just closed our portal, and this year we received a little less than 1,000 applications. Woohoo! Thanks to Jesse, and thanks to Jeffrey for helping me to spread the word. And thanks to those who have applied. And we are currently reviewing the applications. Oh my God, that's a lot of work. But stay tuned. You will be hearing from us very shortly. And the next thing is, Council Member Eric Barcher also mentioned that thanks for allowing us to also sign on the letter to DOT about the 9th Avenue expanded sidewalk safety. I'm not gonna go into details about that. And the open meeting law. So it has been extended for another 30 days through April 20th. So as always, we will keep you updated on any extensions. Last but not least is the composting. We hear a lot of feedbacks from the community regarding the new locations for the new smart bins for the composting program. We are waiting to hear back from DSNY regarding the siting and also the number that you guys requested to increase the number of smart bins. So we will keep you updated on any updates, but in the meantime, we will also be loving to hearing from us regarding any new recommendations. Oh, I'm sorry. I have also a new update on the RTC testimony. So last week, Mr. Borough President testified in support of right to counsel, a law that he introduced in his time in the council, which provide a lawyer to those facing eviction in housing courts. Unfortunately, due to the avalanche of eviction cases, tenants are struggling to get legal representation. So this is why he is calling on the state courts to slow the calendaring of housing cases if the tenants do not have an attorney. So he had a couple real exposure talking about these things. So if you have any questions regarding this issue, you can just contact our office. I also want to add one more thing regarding the community board application. So we are actually, so if you have applied, you should have received an email on scheduling an interview. So if you haven't received an email, please let me know. I will make sure that you will get an email. And that's all I'm reporting. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Yiyi. Appreciate the updates this evening. Up next, Ben Lowenstein from Assemblymember Simone's office, please.
Hi, everybody. My name is Ben Lowenstein. I'm the liaison for CP4 from Assemblymember Simone's office. Assemblymember Simone has been focused the last few weeks on ensuring the state budget delivers for our district. You've likely seen in the news that negotiations are still ongoing with a number of issues still undecided. The Assembly member is working to ensure, or has worked to ensure, that the Assembly majority budget proposal met the needs of the district. And we're proud that our House's proposal rejects MTA fare hikes, fully funds our schools, expands access to childcare, makes it easier and more affordable to go to college, tackles climate change with a bold new all-electric building plan, helps tenants and homeowners, cracks down on gun violence, supports raising the minimum wage, and puts families first in everything that we do. Hopefully the next time you hear from me, we will have a finalized budget and I'll be able to share exactly what did make it into that budget. Last week, Assembly Member Simone stood with the collective action to protect our stores coalition to address crime and safety in retail stores. He signed on to a number of bills to protect retail workers and retailers, including A5250, which would include retail workers as a protected worker so that assaults on them would be considered a Class D felony. A1504, which Senator Royalman Siegel carries in the Senate, and which would make fostering the sale of a stolen good an offense. And A4121, which would raise subsequent petty larceny offenses to grand larceny in the 4th degree. Additionally, on the public safety front, Assembly Member Simone is signed on as a co-sponsor to Assembly Member Boris's bill to remove the limitation on the number of state Supreme Court judges. In New York, our Supreme Courts hear major felony cases, and by adding judges, we can reduce backlogs and resolve cases faster. Earlier this month, Assembly Member Simone passed his first bill, A2890, which will further disability justice by requiring the New York State Office of People with Developmental Disabilities to process applications for determining eligibility and service authorizations in an effective and timely manner within 120 days. Over 120,000 New Yorkers are served by OPWDD, and ensuring accountability in the system that is meant to serve them is crucial. The community and elected officials have long opposed the plan that called for several huge office towers to fund the expansion and improvement of Penn Station. Luckily, the governor has recently scrapped that plan. Assembly Member Simone is eager and ready to work with the governor, the community, and his colleagues in government on a new plan that works for our community and delivers the transportation infrastructure upgrade that we desperately need. In his recent op-ed in the Daily News, Assembly Member Simone called for a new strategy to pay for a new Penn Station. Quote, "The state should continue with the improvements happening now by maintaining the flow of state funds. The legislature could then authorize bonds to pay for the work without relying on future property tax revenue from new development. By taking those steps, the state will position itself to tap into federal infrastructure dollars that could cover up to 80% of the total project cost. Last century, our leaders failed us when they destroyed the great former Penn Station and left us with something that's far less grand, and far less fair to New Yorkers. This is the moment to fix that mistake and not repeat it. And that's all I have. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ben. Appreciate you being here tonight, and congrats on your full board debut as well. Up next, and finally, I believe we have Olivia from Congressman Nadler's office.
Hi, everyone. I will be very, very brief because I know lots going on. I'm sure everyone knows President Trump was indicted today. You know, the congressman thinks the indictment is methodical and well thought out, but of course, Mr. Trump has the opportunity to defend himself in court like every other defendant in our judicial system, you know, but we're just really keeping an eye on the fact that, you know, we don't want DA Bragg to be deterred or intimidated by any of the political stunts from Jim Jordan or Kevin McCarthy or any of that. So keeping an eye on that as always. And then just a few other things. Earlier in the month, Congressman Nadler organized a bipartisan meeting with the governor and our whole New York delegation to learn more about how the state is managing the bank failures that happened in March and its effect on just New Yorkers' confidence in our banking system and all of that. And he also applauds the Biden administration generally for moving swiftly to safeguard depositors while ensuring American taxpayers won't bear the burden of this financial crisis. And I will leave you with just one last thing, which is that Congressman Nadler, along with other members of the Judiciary Committee, wrote a letter to Kevin McCarthy and Jim Jordan, urging them to bring the assault weapons ban to the floor for a vote. In the last Congress, when Congressman Nadler was obviously chair, not ranking member, he shepherded the assault weapons ban from the Judiciary Committee to passage on the House floor, which was fantastic, and it had bipartisan support. But tragic mass shootings like the one we recently saw in Nashville are sober reminders that Congress can and must do more to keep our children safe in school. So hoping to get some movement on that, of course. But happy Trump Indictment Day to all. And that's all.
Thank you, Olivia, for the updates and for being here this evening. And I misspoke when Olivia was going to be last. We are once again joined by our friend in the Mayor's Office of Community Affairs. Robin Forst is here to give us some updates. Robin? I think. Robin, you're up. You're on mute though.
Yep, no, I am off mute now. Sorry, thanks so much.
Okay.
Jeffrey, I will be very brief because I know you have a very full night. Just a couple of quick updates. The Summer Youth Employment Program, which is a very popular program, as many of you know, has extended the deadline for applicants to April 14th, which is a great thing for people who are still contemplating having their children or their neighbors or their family members apply. There is a deadline also for employers, which is the end of May 26th. There's no cost to employers for taking advantage of the Summer Youth Employment Program. So that's a positive. Secondly, staying on the theme of summer, the launch of the Summer Rising enrollment has just been announced, and the application portal will open on April 17th and be open for about 2 weeks. There are about a little over 100,000 Summer Rising seats. So stay tuned for that. And if you have questions, reach out. Finally, as we all know, the COVID emergency, the federal emergency ends on May 11th. And with the expiration of the federal program, New York Health and Hospitals has announced some changes to the existing services and resources. Test and treat core will phase out, but New York Health and Hospitals will continue to make COVID testing and treatment and vaccination available. And they will also continue to manage the city's hotline. So if you need service, if you need medication, that will continue to be available. And that's it for me. So thank you very much.
Robin, thank you for that. And I guess I just want to say I got chills hearing that the test and trace division is winding down, because we heard from them in, I think, April or May of 2020 before this very board. So quite a marker. And thank you for sharing that with us this evening. If you'll pause for a quick question from a colleague of mine, Josephine.
Yeah, hi. Hi, Robin. Thank you for continuing to talk to the ACES community about supports for asylum seeker students. And you had mentioned summer rising, and in CB4 or in the area of CB4, we have 2,200 kids, asylum seeker students that need some sort of summer programming. So want to know, like, what is really the plan for these students, because they certainly can't be expected to stay in their hotel rooms all summer long. So are efforts being made for more seats, especially in this area, to cover all of the students housed in hotels? Thank you.
I don't have the answer, except to say that I'm working with the Department of Education in large measure inspired by your board to see what we can do to assist this population. And I have a meeting early next week, and I will certainly raise that issue with them.
Okay, and if we have, if you might be able to give us any context also with the Parks Department or Chelsea Rec, all of these, I think we're just going to need a lot of help, a lot of support from all the different agencies to try to get as many kids involved in something this summer as we can. Thank you.
I understand, and I agree. Having had kids and summer together, definitely.
They kind of can go hand in hand. Robin, thank you for that. And also thank you, Josephine, for raising that, and props to our ACES committee. Sabrina with the final question, please.
Hi, I'm sorry, it's just to get back to Josephine, because I was in an event this Saturday and the DOE was handing brochures with summer camp for folks who are in the shelter, including asylum seekers, and it's for free. And the enrollment starts on April 14th. I don't have a hand. I'm done. I wish I would have grabbed the flyer, but it's with the shed. Perhaps I don't know if I can connect you to somebody who was there. I spoke to somebody, Josephine, so maybe I can just send you their email. I think I might have them, but I know that there's something on the works, because they're asking for volunteers for that, to do community outreach.
No, I understand that, Sabrina. I know that's the usual summer rising program that they have, and I believe the applications went out on April 3rd in all the shelters. The problem is that we have a huge new community here, and the usual seats are not going to cover everyone that needs them. So that's what we're trying to say is the overage.
Heard all around on this. Thank you guys for raising it. Robin, if you want a quick moment to respond, and then we'll wrap up here.
We'll follow up and report back to you. I don't know about the announcements about the shed and programs there, but I will be in touch with you, Jeffrey, or Jesse, hopefully before the next full board meeting.
Thank you, Robin. We once again appreciate your time here and the mayor's office's presence. We really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Good holiday.
I'm happy to say that concludes our reports from elected officials, and we'll move on to a report from our district manager, Mr. Bodine.
Hi, everybody. I'm Jesse Bodine, District Manager for Community Board 4. I'll be trying to be as quick as possible. Like everybody's already heard, the EO has been extended into the end of April, so we'll continue to be 100% virtual to that point. April committee schedule changes. There really aren't any except for tonight. So we're already here. All the other committees meet at their regular scheduled time. We will probably be adding, we have the bylaws task force that's going to be meeting on the third Monday at 4 p.m. this month and next month. And we'll also probably be scheduling some other working groups, and you'll hear about that, and they'll be posted as accordingly. I'm sorry, the big change, but I do want to flag something I'm sorry, Jeffrey, if I'm taking your thunder, but I just will flag it because it's just what part of this operation is that nothing in April changes for Triple HS, but in May, we will be changing the date of Triple HS committee. It will be meeting instead of the third Thursday, it'll be meeting the first Thursday of the month. So you will be seeing that change on the calendar. And so that's starting in May, just to flag it for all, I believe all committee members know, I certainly know the co-chairs know, but if for the general public as well, you'll be seeing that change starting in May. And then I did want to mention something that was raised before about safe biking. So CB4 along with CB5 and CB6 are doing kind of a conducting a mass PSA campaign using the Link NYC kiosks with a flyer about safe biking and about not riding on the sidewalk and things like that, just because we've heard so much from a number of the block associations and community about that particular issue. So right now that's going to be going out in English, but we'll have that translated very shortly into Spanish and other languages. And then finally, I wanted to give a great piece of great news. And I'm happy to report that the MCB4 district office family will be getting a little bit bigger. And so Janine and Mohammed will be expecting a little baby this summer. And we're all extremely excited and extremely nervous for when Janine can't be in the office and tell me what to do every day. But so we're all very excited for Janine and Mohammed, and congratulations.
Thank you, everybody.
Janine, congratulations.
Thank you.
Absolutely. I was about to text you, but you're here, so congrats.
Wait, when is the due date? When is the due date?
Towards the end of July.
Great. Well, thank you for that, Jesse. And just a quick flag on any office update to share, just from is there anything formal we always add, I feel like, to that.
No, well, so no, that's a good point. So we are still on track to be moving into our permanent long-term location at the Film Center building on 9th Avenue and 45th Street there. That should be happening at the very end of 2024. We will be needing to extend our current temporary location. We are working very hard with our current landlord to find a location in the building that we are in. I know most of you have never seen the office, so what does it matter? But it will matter once that EO stops happening and we choose to meet in hybrid fashion. So we are working very hard to find a space that will accommodate, obviously, the day-to-day Monday through Friday office requirements, but then will also allow a space big enough to hold a committee meeting in which we can put in the technology to allow for hybrid meetings when and if we have to. So, but yeah.
Yes, the end of 24 or 23?
End of 24 for the permanent space, Joe. Unfortunately, the gears move slowly. We will be going through our own ULURP.
We have our own ULURP to do.
We'll have our own ULURP. So please don't deny us. And yeah, so but we'll be going in front of the Department of City Planning and presenting very shortly. And it's a very truncated schedule, not the normal, multi-month process. So, but we hopefully will be in the new space in 2020, by the end of 2024. Thank you.
Thanks, Jesse. Sure. And now on to reports from the chair. Hi, everybody. Some small meetings, updates. The Penn Station Working Group met with Senator Comrie of Queens regarding the Penn Station project. Why are we meeting with the senator from Queens? He sits on a very important advisory board to the state regarding the project, and we felt it was important to share our concerns as it relates to the project. And of course, there's been good news as it relates to Penn and that and the redevelopment around the station and of the station recently. So stay tuned for more on that. The Clinton Hell's Kitchen Land Use Meeting met with ESD, the Empire State Development Corporation, regarding Site K, which is across the street from the Javits Center. You'll recall last year that we were very relieved that Governor Hochul removed the RFP from the market, which was a fully commercial RFP under Governor Cuomo. And we were very happy to have the meeting with ESD because they are indeed curious to learn what Board 4 is interested in having be a part of this RFP process. I have to give props where it's due, and that is the fact that they want to talk to us before the RFP even goes to market. So hoping we can continue the positive trend with ESD as it relates to our engagements with Bayview, of which I have no specific update, but that nonetheless, this was a very good sort of first step as it relates to the Site K discussion going forward. And just Site K is on our affordable housing plan with big gains, we hope, for housing on that site. And then separately, Jesse and I had a field trip last Friday to Rescue 1 on West 43rd Street. We met with the captain there, which was a really great morning meeting, a lot of coffee at that rescue firehouse, and had a tour, and also, of course, spoke with them because they are in need of a new home. And so talking sort of early steps on what that process looks like, what ideas we have, what it is they have. So stay tuned for that from our friends at the FDNY. Task forces and working groups. I'm really excited to announce this evening, coming on the heels of numerous committee discussions this year and a whole bunch of committee discussions last year, the announcement of a working group to take on a discussion regarding the residential FAR cap and process. This working group is basically a direct reaction from the recent committee meetings on the subject. It will convene like all our committees do with a published agenda and participatory and publicly participatory meetings. Those meetings will be public with an agenda defined by the working group members, myself, and of course, experts and stakeholders will be invited to speak and be present at those meetings. So stay tuned for, if you're interested, the agendas and announcements as it relates to that going forward. With regards to our cannabis working group, props to them and Jesse Greenwald for the cannabis forum that was held last Thursday on the squares. That is up on our CB4 website, also as well as our YouTube channel. If you're curious about mechanisms for enforcement, legalization, licensing, all that stuff, it was all there. I want to give great props to both of the Jessies for making that happen. Our work with Board 2 on this as well to the south, and just continuing to have a robust discussion on it as well is very good. The bylaws task force, which you'll recall a committee was formally convened for that 2 months ago. They are meeting the third Monday of each month at 4 p.m. Again, stay tuned for those agendas. If you have any ideas or things you want to send along to the bylaws working group, feel free to send them to Jesse or me, and we will transmit those to the group. Or better yet, if you can tune into a meeting, please do so. The Port Authority Bus Terminal Replacement Working Group. Well, I will leave the updates for that for later in the meeting, which we'll be taking up under new business for item 18. So stay tuned there and get a read on that letter if you haven't already. Again, back to Penn Station. I'm pleased to report that we are co-sponsoring a forum with our colleagues in Board 5 on April 18th that will be held at the New York Public Library. As of right now, this meeting will not be streamed, but it will be recorded and accessible after the fact. I'm kind of engaging with Board 5 to kind of push with hopes that it can be live streamed as well. And so stay tuned for the announcements on that and the rollout accordingly. The NYU Capstone Working Group has continued to work forward. I'll note that we anticipate agenda items coming before WPE and the Transportation Committee in the coming month to take up as it relates to the work that group has been doing to move that forward, as that work will also be winding down in May. A couple of other final points of interest. Jesse mentioned the new monthly date for the HHHS meeting, again, the first Thursday of the month, with thanks to the co-chairs and all the members of the committee for making this adjustment. I also just want to flag a couple of other things. Two bits of positive news, two totally separate issues. LPC has officially scheduled a hearing for 128 West 17th Street, which is the former colored school number 4, that we advocated for in a significant way to get its due in terms of landmarking and acknowledgement. And of course, with great credit to our colleagues on CLU and Mr. Washington, who's been leading the charge on this. I assume we'll be submitting testimony at that hearing, and hopefully with applause, we welcome the vote from the commissioners to recommend historic designation. Also, in other bits of good news, you'll recall last year a number of deaths in the gay community. 2 gay men were murdered after being sort of entrapped and drugged at nightclubs in the neighborhood. Thankfully, after much investigation, a number of arrests have been made. I believe we're up to 8, including convictions for murder, as well as a whole bunch of other not convictions, I misspoke, charges. I apologize. Charges have been issued for individuals identified associated with the 2 what are categorized as murders from folks who visited LGBT establishments in Hell's Kitchen. And of course, this came out of significant investigation from the police and the DA's office. And I just want to acknowledge the significance of local reporting. It was West 42nd that first started reporting on this, and it was months before the New York Times picked it up. And it is now regularly reported on in papers like the Times, the Daily News, and the Post. And so just a shout out both to the fact that local journalism has an important role in our communities. And I am thankful, and I think I speak for the board, for the diligence of the police and the DA with regards to finding out who was really traumatizing folks visiting nightlife establishments. So that was a lot from me. Any questions on those updates before we move into finally our business portion of the meeting? Okay. So with that, I switch tabs and bring up the agenda tonight and pass it over to Frank in Berlin and Bert, I think, in Chelsea.
Definitely in Chelsea. Frank, you must be like 1 or is it 2 o'clock in the morning where you are?
It is 2:34, but I do feel strongly about an agenda item, so I'm here.
I hope you had a good opera tonight.
I did. I guess I would suggest that we take any questions about items 1 to 9 first.
Thank you, Frank. Is there any questions on items 1 through 9?
I would suggest if there's no questions, we bundle items 1 through 9. And
We will do that.
Say what?
Go ahead, and I would say, so with that, number 10 it is.
Number 10, both Frank and I voted no. The majority of the committee, for whatever reasons they had in their head at the time, voted yes. So it really wouldn't be proper for either Frank or I to present number 10. So I think Ted has volunteered, but we may be
love a
surprised.
good volunteer. So with that, I will pass it over to Ted.
Yeah, and I just want to preface this, that we all may be surprised that the committee may have reconsidered their positions. I don't know, let's find out.
Thank you, Bert. Ted?
Hi, guys. So I just want to give a little bit of background. The applicant, Tri-Alphas, originally came to the BLP on April 14th and were denied at that meeting, and they were seeking a 2,000 plus capacity with rooftop, and the applicants withdrew their application before the full board at that time and wanted to come back with a revised plan. The applicants then came back with a revised plan on March 14th to the BLP meeting, and they agreed to reduce their occupancy to 750 people, both inside and the rooftop. There was many people at the block association, or from the block associations rather, that came in and speaking against the applicant based on the size of the venue, the concerns of rezoning of 11th Avenue for more residential. They also had concerns with conflicting stories from the operator's plans. Board members brought up concerns about not having a sound report inside, and they were concerned about the rooftop use, and also not having enough egresses for 750 people on the plan. The application from BLP was approved by 7 members and denied by 3. The application passed with the stipulations of not to use the rooftop, no future rooftop use, submitting a new sound report prior to the full board that was city approved acoustician, and agreed to implement the recommendations for the sound report. The sense that I got from the people that voted against were concerned that they didn't trust the applicant based on not having a clear vision of what the space would be and the lack of acknowledgement or knowledge of the plan that they were presenting. The people that were in favor, I got a sense that they were very appreciative of the changes of occupancy and not using the rooftop. However, I did get a sense from people that did vote yes, wanted a little bit more answers, and that's why they asked for a sound test that was inside the venue as opposed to just on the rooftop. And the community board did receive a sound report that was submitted from the inside the club. So that's kind of where we're at. Nice.
Ted, Mr. Arenas, thank you for that excellent summary and for stepping in to present the letter. If the members with their hands up will allow me, I'm going to defer and go to Frank to start the discussion here. Frank?
Thanks. And thanks for doing that, Ted, which I think accurately summarized our discussions. Some quick points. What struck me about this application, as Ted noted, they came to the BLP twice in February and March, and they're before the full board tonight. And at no time did anyone unaffiliated with the applicant speak in favor of this application, which is pretty much unheard of on a controversial application in my experience. So we had no one from the community supporting it, and we had strong opposition from two well-established block associations, 47 and 48 and 4954, representing 8 blocks in the immediate vicinity, strongly opposing it. In addition, the applicant is not someone in this community or known to this community board. So I'm very concerned that an application that has no connection or support from the community wants to come and open a massive club. My second point is this used to be an auto dealership. It is previously unlicensed. So we're going into very uncharted territory. I do think, as Ted noted, what influenced the committee was they reduced, what they wanted to open from 4,500 people to 750 people. But the fact that at our February meeting, they insisted they could not function unless they had 4,500 people, and then a month later, we're suddenly at 750, just makes me really question, their business plan and whether this is viable, or whether if we grant approval for 750 people, they will be back immediately, saying we can't do this, we need to open a much bigger venue. In any event, 750 people at this location, previously unlicensed, open till 4 a.m. nightly, is a huge imposition on a neighborhood that is strongly opposed to it.
Thanks, Frank. Now down the line, Carrie first, please.
Thanks, and thanks, Ted, for that. I was the third person on BLP to recommend denial of this application. And for all the reasons that you heard from the community, as well as what Frank just laid out, I just want to reiterate one thing that has stuck in my mind since this meeting. Again, there's C of O issues. There are, previous experience issues. There's massive opposition from the community, which I think is our primary job to recognize. When they came before us the second time, there was concern from the community that they continued to refer to this neighborhood as a ghetto. There was no residential housing or residential, opportunity for residential housing to be in this neighborhood. And I'm just going to read you a quick quote from our own affordable housing plan, which is that MCB4 recognizes that blocks west of 11th Avenue from West 24th to West 56th Streets in selected blocks with recognition of the surrounding context should be designated for residential development. So by no means is this a ghetto. I don't even know what that means, but I just think that this operator has no understanding of their community, of our community, and no interest in understanding our community, which is why I voted to deny. Thanks.
Thanks, Carrie. Chris? We can't hear you. I'm going to go to Jesse. Okay, thanks, Chris. Jesse Greenwald?
Okay, well, I was one of the people who voted in favor of this. In fact, some might call me one of the stronger advocates in favor. And let me tell you, boy, do I regret my vote. And that evening, let me apologize to the board. As Jeffrey said, I may and we may all owe you drinks. It's not worth wasting your time with the reason why we all voted in favor of it. If you want to talk to me, you can. It was more. It doesn't really matter. The point is the concerns that we that have been raised were all obviously mentioned at the board at the meeting, but it really wasn't until after our vote that some of the more significant concerns were raised, and at that point we weren't really sure how to proceed, especially the lack of a significant sound report among other issues. Having talked to my fellow community members and really getting a appreciation for the fact that these owners and proprietors really have no idea what they're doing, it is not only disheartening, but it's certainly worthy of great skepticism with regards to their application. For example, this is a car dealership, and apparently, if you're going to operate a nightclub of this size, or any nighttime establishment, you need to be able to serve food. There's no kitchen. There was no mention of a kitchen, among many other problems. But at this point, we made it very clear to them, even among those who voted in favor, we all did so with significant reservations, and we told them, you are going to have some real trouble at the full board, so come prepared. Come with people who are going to support you. Come with a more detailed plan. And let me tell you, they are not here. They showed up with no one. It seems like they've almost abandoned the cause altogether. I'm happy to change my vote on this one, and I am sorry that we have spent so much time on it tonight. Thanks all.
Thanks. I want to go to Christine for a potential solution, and then I'll go back to Chris.
Well, first I want to say we screwed up. Really, on this one. Just got very impressed with the fact that they had responded to what they asked us, we asked them to do, which was to go from 4,500 to 750 and nothing on the rooftop. So that was the big win at the time, and it felt like this was good. And in addition to the fact that it was on 11th Avenue and a little less closer to 10 and 9, which are closer to our traditional concerns, these are two things that kind of carried the day for me. But I mean, considering everything, and now after seeing the report, the sound report, it's a horrible sound report. I mean, it's like there are typos everywhere. It's not really well designed. The test is not properly designed. They are comparing, apples and oranges, and it's clear that they are using people which are not professional to do that. So as far as I'm concerned, that kind of, round up the discussion about want to change my vote, and not only that, but I'd like to offer a motion to flat out deny, if there is somebody to second it.
I second.
I would second it.
Thank you. Look at the swift second. Carrie's mic was ready. I appreciate that. So with a motion on the table to change the letter from a deny unless to an outright denial, which would, I think, really very much roundly reflect what we've heard from the community tonight, and is also more in step with what Christine has sort of summarized as a really weak acoustical report. I need to sort of take a vote on that motion if there's a willingness to proceed with this. I guess if those who sort of manage the letter are willing to accept this as sort of a flip, what we would ordinarily consider as a friendly, this technically totally changes the letter, but if it's accepted from those who sort of voted for it in committee, I think it's appropriate that we could adopt it as the new letter.
It's a substitute motion.
Perfect.
Yes.
So with a second on this, I'd like to call for.
Well, don't you want to hear from the people who have raised hand?
I guess if there's the questions would be on the motion to start, because the motion's been made. And so now I'll take questions specifically to the motion for the new letter. So Chris, comments on the new letter.
You're still mute. What's going on?
Jeffrey, can you say what the new motion is again, please?
Yes, sorry, Dolores. The new letter, the new motion that's been put forth would provide for an outright denial of the application different than our deny unless with stipulations. Roberta.
So my question was mostly about the audio report. I think Christine largely summarized it. I don't know if there's an overview, wasn't good and it seemed unprofessional. Are there more things that we should know about the audio report?
No, it was,
Yes.
it was, oh, Frank, you want to go?
Yeah, I was going to say one thing is there's a New York City list of approved acoustical engineers, and we asked that they get a report from someone on that list, and this firm is not on that list. And to me, that's a major factor. But our typical audio reports are, 10 to 20 pages with charts and graphics, and this, I think, was 2 to 3.
Can I speak on that?
Yes, I was going to go to you next, Ted, actually.
The thing about the sound report that struck me as odd is that they didn't have any recommendations for any soundproofing. 80 decibels is usually the frequency that picks up bass, and that was not included in the sound study. And also they have a door right there with with no vestibule. So anytime the door open, it would be impossible to be able to do that without it affecting the outside neighborhood. So that's kind of like what struck me as a little bit odd and made me reconsider my vote.
And Ted, my other concern was that they compared to, or instead of comparing to a quiet night in the evening, right, as a base, they compared it to 3 o'clock in the afternoon, 4 o'clock in the afternoon, where indeed the traffic on 11th Avenue is just very, very bad and very loud. So that comparison doesn't make any sense. It looks like it's totally biased.
JD?
I just want to make one comment. Ted, I know you're a bar owner, but the report you gave today was neutral, balanced, and just terrific as a board member. So bravo.
We love good presentations. Thank you, Ted. Joe.
Yeah, I just want to add 2 things to this motion. The first is we need to note that the owner did not know the building required a new C of O, which is crazy. And number 2, that it's anything more than 74 people is a place of public assembly. And that requires a new C of O, but also the special regulations for place of public assembly. Mm-hmm. The fact that they were ignorant of that really speaks to their lack of experience. The other thing is to note the adjacent residential was catty corner right across the street on the east side of 11th between 4748. And then there's residential along 47th and 46th between 10th and 11th. And across the street, 636 11th Avenue, I have gotten multiple calls recently about residential conversion of that building, the Ogilvy and Mather building that's now empty. So I think we really are going to look at some major residential surrounding this, just to note it for the record that this is not in a desert with no residential.
I was going to note, because I happen to like the architecture of the building on the east side of 11th Avenue there, which is all residential. I've watched it go up. So right. It is indeed residential on the east side of 11th. Thank you, Joe. To Brad next, please.
So real quick, I'd like to ask the co-chairs, we deny, what is the SLA's response? I know, can they approve it? And could they turn their application into 4,500 and still get approval?
So Brad, there'll be 2 steps if we recommend denial. By law, there has to be a 500-foot hearing in front of an administrative law judge who will make the determination about whether an additional license here is in the public interest. And that recommendation will then go to the full board. Our understanding is that if a community board opposes an application, there will be the SLA 3 commissioners will schedule it for a live hearing in which we can, and anyone else can, appear and speak. So by opposing it, we get a voice heard. Yes, it is possible that the SLA will grant more than what the applicant was willing to stipulate for here. I think the concerns of a lot of us are that the stipulations they agreed to, 750 people and no use of the roof, may last for a year or two, but that we'll be hearing an application for an alteration soon. And my personal judgment is that we are better fighting this now than fighting it, a year or two down the road when they want to go back to their original capacity numbers.
Thanks for that, Frank.
Thank you.
Thanks, Brad. Mike?
Yeah, I just want to go on the record and say that I'm changing my vote to no for all of the reasons that were stated tonight. I mean, did a great job. And with respect to the 500-foot hearing, Frank, this might be one of those cases where we want to send somebody up there.
I want to clarify. Well, actually, interesting you say that because Jesse spent the day at the SLA recently regarding that. Mike, I think, in fact, you may be voting yes because the new letter.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Letter,
that's right. Yes.
Is an outright denial.
Right.
So,
yes.
Exhausted the question list. Appreciate the discussion.
Call to question on the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Devlin. Is there any objections to the replacement letter? So, hearing no objections, are there any abstentions? Present, not eligible? So hearing a unanimous agreement that there will be this replacement letter, when you vote for item 10 on the vote sheet, vote as if it is the replacement letter. So no matter what is in the drop box for item 10, that currently says deny unless with the stipulations, item 10 on your vote sheet is for the new letter, which based on the discussion tonight, I'm going to be voting yes for now, as I think many will hear this evening. So just to absolute clarity, the item 10 on the vote sheet, as you vote for, is for the new replacement letter, which is an outright denial for the club on 11th Avenue.
Right.
Ms. Bogosian.
Or just to take it out of, to make it simpler, if you are against a liquor license on this item, vote yes on the vote sheet.
Leslie.
I have a question for the chairs. Is there value, and I honestly don't know, is there value to add in the letter that this is somewhat a slated potential for affordable housing, or there are bigger ideas for this space, or does that have nothing to do with it when it goes in front of upstate?
I guess I don't see, well, I'm not sure about this particular site. I think the
area.
Yeah, dimensions of affordable housing include the building across the street and so forth. I don't see any harm to putting it in there. I could see the SLA saying, sorry, that's speculative, but I don't see a downside to including that. And we actually had and still have a complete denial letter drafted that was supposed to be voted on at last month's full board meeting, but the applicant withdrew their application literally the day of the full board meeting. So we'll revise that letter, but we're ready to go on the denial letter.
I would agree with Frank. I would say it's important to add that, though it wouldn't necessarily be a consideration that the SLA would have to take in for legal reasons.
That's what I was hoping, Bert, you would say. That's what I was hoping, that we would add it and see where it falls.
Yeah.
Thank you, Frank and Bert, and to everybody for that discussion. Up next to Christine and Dale for TPC, Transportation Planning, which I think Dale is absent this evening. So Christine.
Oh, Dale is absent. So anybody
Yes.
has any question on those three letters?
Items 12, 13, 14.
13, 14, yeah, 12, 13, 14.
Betty? You're on mute, Betty.
Sorry, I get all passionate and I forget. I thought maybe the request for the pedestrian safety sign should it should include what corner that would be at. That's all, just a minor thing.
Oh, okay, we'll add that. It's a north, it's really not the corner, it's the, it's on the crossing of 8th Avenue, on the north side crossing of 8th Avenue. So I will add that detail, yes.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks, Betty. Marty?
Thank you. Item 12, the Quill bus. I'm in favor of all of these letters. Thank you for doing them. The Quill bus letter mentions that the bus companies are talking about electric vehicles, and the letter was pleased that it was doing that. My question is, is there anything in the protocols that includes in the bus terminal revision the installation of charging devices so that those buses, while they're in the bus terminal, can be refurbishing their
So Marty, this is the Quill bus depot, which is an MTA depot on the west side between 11 and 12. It is not the Port Authority.
I guess I'd have the same question, however.
Right, okay, so the what we have heard is that they are installing charging stations so that the bus can charge at night.
If that's part of the protocol, maybe you could include it in the letter.
Okay, all right, I thought we kind of did, but I will clarify that.
Thank you.
Thanks, Marty, and thanks, Christine.
Okay.
With no other questions, we'll move on to Carrie and Jessica with Chelsea Land Use.
Yes, really quickly, we have an application, an LPC application for to install planters at 675 Avenue of the Americas, which is, for anyone who frequents Chelsea or lives in Chelsea, it's right outside of Trader Joe's and Michael's on 6th Avenue. This is the second time they've applied for these planters, and this is the second time that we are voting to recommend denial. Really, they are not consistent with the historical design of the building, nor are they proposed with any consideration of furthering the element of the historic district. This agenda item will possibly go to TPC, where they will, I'm sure, look at overcrowding of the sidewalk, multiple pedestrian obstructions, licensed vendors that would be displaced by the planters, and safety issues due to obstruction of the height of the planters from the sidewalk to the street for pedestrians and bicycles. So it's the same, a slightly different application and the same recommendation.
Thanks, Carrie. Any questions on item 15? Great, thank you, Clue. We are skipping over Clinton Hell's Kitchen Land Use as their letters being returned to committee. And then to me for exec to present on a joint letter between WPE and TPC regarding curbside electric vehicle and charging stations. This is, I would say, sort of the summation of a 5 to 6 month effort by both committees. They had a lengthy presentation last month at the joint committee meeting. And this was, given that it's a joint committee letter, came through exec as well this month. So any questions on the final letter? Hearing none, I will go to the next item, which will also sort of come from me, but Bert as well. New business. As many as everybody should know, we have a Port Authority bus terminal replacement working group that has worked diligently to meet with the port, to communicate, to really push the plans of the community upon the port, and also ensure that the terminal is redeveloped, vastly improved, and its expansion plans fit within the recommendations that we've long made over the years. We've had great progress, but it has stalled of recent, and we want to inform and educate the governor about what our process has been like as it relates to the Port Authority, and to ensure, most importantly, that our priority for a newly improved bus terminal is her priority. And in particular, to make sure that the port sees the value of community input and support for this project. And so we want to use this letter as a way to educate the governor, and also to make sure that our local elected officials are aware of some of the concerns that we lay out in this letter. The letter provides for both a history and a whole bunch of very technical statements made by the Port Authority going back to 2016 in their capital plan. And then more recently, around what we see as some objections to why the port is trying to seemingly get away from prioritizing a terminal redevelopment. So we are bringing this up as new business this evening. Are there any questions or anything to add, Bert, from you on this letter?
I think what you said, Jeffrey, it's important that we want to have our elected as allies. That's one of the reasons we're doing this with the governor, to push our priority. We don't want this to get lost in some greater vision of the Port Authority that they may have diminished. Some people in the Port Authority may have diminished the importance of a new bus terminal, diminished the importance of talking with the community and rebuilding the bus terminal. So we want to re-emphasize that, and that's what this letter does. And it's not just letting our electeds know that we're concerned. We want them to work with us in terms of getting this refocused. Okay, I would just add, I just would like to add one little addition on line 24, where we say have only recently resumed, those meetings have only recently resumed. I would add to that, yet without an agreed to schedule. I don't want anyone to get the impression that, oh, we're going back to meeting every 2 weeks. No, we are not. And we can't get yet an agreement from them of what a schedule is. But we'll call you when it's, good for us, which may be 6 months later.
Sure. I think that is appropriate, given that it's based on the fact that we were meeting every other week for, I think, 6 to 7 months or longer, frankly.
Longer.
So, thank you, Bert. Dolores?
Interesting. I actually don't think that's appropriate. And to add that, because I think that one thing is to have the letter be an educational letter for the governor to clarify our priorities and to ensure that our electeds are on the same page. There's no reason to go ahead in that type of letter to be critical of this organization that will eventually have to go ahead and reconcile with their budget, with their plans, et cetera. I think that we probably would do better if we stick to just providing just the education and not the commentary on that agency.
Thanks, Dolores. Any other questions?
I would just want to say I disagree, Dolores. Many times we've agreed, but I disagree with you on that.
No, I knew you disagree. I just needed to be on record that
I get it, because I don't see it.
Doesn't fit with our board objective.
I think it does fit because we have to communicate where we are in the process. And this is where we are in the process without an agreed to schedule, which we previously had. And I don't necessarily read between lines, but there may be a reason they don't want to have an agreed to schedule right now, which they had been adhering to before. So I think it's important to bring that up again.
Thank you, Bert. Jessica?
I just wonder if there's a compromise there, that in the last paragraph where it says, as MCB4 requests that the project be fully funded, somewhere in there to just indicate that and a meeting schedule is confirmed, or that community participation is solidified, like a plan for community participation is solidified, or something that just ends with this as a note of saying that we have this expectation.
Yeah, hold on. I see lots of hands, but we made that ask to the port in our previous letter 2 months ago, and they have not committed to a regular schedule, as had been the case for over a year sort of prior to this. So I think that's not an unreasonable add. I'm fine with that. I'm also fine with Bert's addition as well. So happy to finesse the language there, Jessica. Joe?
You're on mute, Joe.
You're on mute.
I apologize. I just think that we don't need to continually hammer this issue, because that's a function of the people we're working with that we have a long-term relationship with. So just, Bert, I'm going to ask you to think about a little bit more finesse on this, because that will be pointed at those individuals as opposed to the broader question of if and when these in general communication is being pushed, being slowed down because the project is in flux. So that's our finesse point. So Bert, think about a couple word or two after this meeting just to make that point very clear.
Thanks, Joe. Christine?
Yeah, I wouldn't change the last paragraph. I think the last paragraph should be really focused on securing a budget and securing the money. And that's what we really want out of that. So I wouldn't change that. On the other issue, we may find a way to say that differently, Bert, and saying, we had 2 meetings which were not, next to each other, or which were not, there was no schedule, let's put it this way. We could say there was no schedule and we had 2 meetings, something like that. That would be a compromise.
I mean, I think one of the reasons I'm inclined to recognize this important tidbit as friendly is because the governor has jurisdiction and direct, sway over the Port Authority. And so acknowledging that there was consistent, regular, planned meetings is important because we've noticed a distinct change. And the point is to sort of be able to reference the fact that what we had going was very real, and we would like that to resume. And we're not aware why there's not a reason for it to resume. Dolores, I'm going to go to Betty next for a new hand.
Yeah.
Thanks, Betty.
And I'm unmuted. Anyway, I really, really like this letter in general. And I just think it's fabulous that we're focusing on the budget and that we've quoted them from 2016. And I don't know about the, recurring meeting schedule. I'd have that soft. And Jeffrey, didn't you at the last minute say, I could be wrong, that the electeds are very enthusiastic about this letter?
Oh, yes, they are.
So their enthusiasm is just
Betty, because of the reason we take positions is because this allows them to advocate on our behalf, and it really lays out something very specific for them to advocate for.
okay. So they're not going to sign on to the letter.
No,
They're
that's
just
not the intention.
enjoy the letter and move on to their way of doing it.
They're going to utilize the letter, which is what we like them to do when we take positions like this.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. JD, I'm indulging the new hands, folks. Just thank you. JD?
Thank you, Jeffrey. I think we should try to reconcile these 2 very important points without attacking the people or even giving the impression that we're attacking the people we are working with, because we are going to have to work with them again. And so I would recommend that we get both points across, but make sure that we are not antagonizing those very people at that level we're going to have to work with again. And I think we can achieve both objectives with a little tweaking.
I think that's totally fair, especially given that, whenever we've written a letter like this, Bert has given a call to the folks that we work with regularly to make sure they know what's coming. Because as we've always said, whenever we're criticizing or looking to make an agency better, it's not about the person, it's about the agency, which is of the whole. So I by no means is the intention of this letter to be an attack on the good folks that we regularly engage with at the port. It is meant to both educate the governor, provide historical context, and hopefully have a sort of a reset on making sure we can keep moving the redevelopment plan and discussions moving forward. So, Dolores?
So thank you for that clarity. As we know, the Port Authority, when something goes wrong, they blame the people who are directly speaking to us. So those young folks, those folks that are working day to day on the projects are going to feel the sting. So if the objective that you just outlined is to educate, but also to inform that we had a regular cadence of meetings, we can do that without being critical, because it falls on the wrong people, just as Joe said, in terms of that criticism. We can clearly say we have had a long history of very strong cooperation and also been able to engage on a regular basis. We look forward to that opportunity to continue working with this agency on the issues that we have identified within our community, something to that effect. Because again, as JD just said, the concern is about the people you have to continue to work with going forward, and that it does not impact them. And you even said it yourself. That's
I
not your
appreciate that. I think that's the case with every single agency or individual we address a letter to. And so I hope the scrutiny applies to every agency we direct a letter at, as much as we're concerned with the port here. Joe?
Yeah, I think the solution is if you read lines 11 to 14,
on page 1 or 2?
On page 1, it ends with, in the last several months, engagement has reduced significantly and critically important issues remain unresolved. Just a new sentence that said, we reiterate our request in our letter of X that we sent Bert to resume regularly scheduled meetings. Just leave it at that.
That perfectly references the fact that we've called for that request.
That's right.
And also, acknowledges the previous, cadence of communication.
Right. I think that's the solution to settle this.
That sounds very good, Joe.
Christine?
I'm concerned about that. I don't want this letter to say, oh, now we've restarted the meeting. That's what you asked for. What we are really asking for is the money.
That's it. That's there, Christine, already. This is merely on the point of resuming the communication.
Well, I don't mind putting that in and putting, maybe not in that place, but I agree we should put that in, but not emphasize it so much.
It's right after you haven't been meeting with us, so it's the response, let's meet regularly. It sort of flows in the text.
Yeah, it's somewhere. We'll find a place to put it.
I think I want to own the fact that I am very cognizant of the concerns as it relates to what's been raised this evening. But I also feel very strongly it's important we acknowledge the fact that there was a previously very consistent, very engaging series of meetings and communication with the community. And so hearing all that has been heard, I hope we can agree, given that there'll be probably 6 or 7 people a part of the review for what would probably end up being a half a sentence into this letter, my good colleagues, that with no more questions, we can take up the voting portion of this meeting, because we have nothing to report from Housing, Health, and Human Services, nor ACEs. And so with nothing else, I thank everybody for the discussions on this and all the prior letters. And I am pleased to pass it over to Katie and Roberta to call the roll. I also want to just remind folks about item 10 on the vote sheet, which Jesse sent earlier this afternoon. And the specifics are on there with regards to the letter that's been tabled and sent back to committee, et cetera. And so everything should be very straightforward. In item 10, you are voting on the new letter as a straight replacement. And as Frank summarized appropriately, if you are against a liquor license at the 11th Avenue establishment, vote yes. So with that, I pass it over to Katie and Roberta to call the roll.
Great. Thank you, Jeffrey. All right. Ted, as always, we start with you.
Yes to all.
Thank you. Roberta.
Yes to all.
Christine.
Yes to all.
Gwen. Is she here?
She should be. She was.
Yes to all.
Oh, thanks, Gwen. Leslie Bogosian Murphy.
No on 17 and yes to the rest.
Got it. Viren.
And see Viren.
Okay. Jessica.
Yes to all.
Aurora. No.
Aurora's not. No, Aurora's not making it.
Okay. Marty.
No on 17, yes to the rest.
Thank you. Paul.
Yes to all.
Great. Thanks, Paul. Pete Diaz.
Yes to all, submitted.
Thank you. Tina.
Yes to all.
Thanks. Wendy?
Yes to all.
Great. Matt?
Yes to all.
Jesse Greenwald?
Yes to all.
Candace?
Yes to all.
David Haluka?
Yes to all.
Thank you. Frank?
Yes to all.
Josephine?
Yes to all.
Yadira?
Yadira is not going to make it.
Okay. Peggy?
Nope.
Gary?
Yes to all.
Lowell?
No on 17, yes to the rest.
Blake?
No on 10 as amended and yes to the rest.
Great. Bert?
Yes to all.
Chris?
Yes to all.
Betty?
Submitted.
Thank you.
Yes to all.
Sarah?
No, she's not going to be here.
Okay. Tina Nelson?
Yes to all.
Thank you. Mike Noble?
Yes to all and submitted.
JD?
Sorry, no on 17, yes to all.
Maria?
Sorry, yes to all.
Great. Alan?
Yes to all.
Brad?
No on 15, no on 17, yes to the rest. Thank you.
No 15, no 17, yes to the rest. Okay, thank you. Joe?
No on 17, yes to the rest.
Sabrina?
I'm yes to all, but I believe I'm present and eligible on 18, capital project.
Got it. P&E, okay.
Port, Sabrina?
Pardon me?
For the Port Authority, though?
Yeah, it's state funded, but city funded. It's all goes to MB.
Got it. Sorry, that's a healthy P&E. Sorry.
Yeah, sorry.
Dolores?
No on 17, yes to the rest.
David Solnick? Not here?
I don't see him here today.
Okay, thought I saw him. I'm up next. Yes to all. And then Charlie.
Yes to all.
Thank you. Is Kit here?
I did not see Kit.
Okay. Hector.
Yes to all and submitted.
Thank you. Marino.
No on 17 and submitted. Yes to the rest and submitted.
Great. James Wallace.
Not here tonight.
Okay. David Warren.
Yay to all.
Great. Thanks, David. Leslie Williams.
I don't think he's here.
No, I don't see him either.
Okay. Carl Wilson.
Carl Wilson is no longer a part of it.
Oh, yeah, sorry. Right. Forgot to delete him. Okay. And last but not least, Alice.
I abstain on 17, yes to the rest.
Great. Oh, and then last but not least, of course, to close us out is Jeffrey.
An easy one for me tonight. Aye on all. Thank you, Katie.
Then I think that's it from us.
Great. Thank you, everybody. Before I call on Dolores for a motion to adjourn, I want to acknowledge the fact that I'm not sure if anybody broke fast this evening for Ramadan, and as folks get ready for Passover and Easter, and even for those of us that aren't religious, the birth of spring, and what a nice change of season it is. So enjoy the time. And Ms. Rubin, I look to you for the next motion, please.
Motion to adjourn then.
Thank you. Accepted, and have a great week, everybody.
Good night.